Okay, so all right, we can start now. So I have requested the host to allow me to record on my computer.
Yes, Prabhuji.
ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमः ओं विष्णुपदाय कृष्णाय श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वतीदेवे गौरवाणि निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. All right. So today's topic is very interesting and very important also, because there are many people from outside ISKCON or maybe within ISKCON who are not clearly aware about the bhakti that we are doing, which is basically Rag Marg. Because as per scriptures, as per the Acharyas, even as per Srila Prabhupada, one cannot go to Vrindavan, Golok Vrindavan, or you can say uh, Braj in the spiritual world without following in the footsteps of the Brajvasis, right? So this is a principle. It's not a detail. That's a principle. And with Vaidhi Bhakti, we cannot go to Krishna Lok. We have to go to either we go to Mathura, Dwarka, or we can go to Goloka, but there is a section which is called as Aishwarya Golok. So if you worship Radha and Krishna in sorry by the bhakti, then or which means that you are worshiping Radha Krishna with awe and reverence, then you will not be able to attain Braj. So you go to a section in Goloka which is called Aishwarya Golok, right? So whether ISKCON is following Raganuga Bhakti, Raganuga Marg, whether ISKCON devotees they do practice this spontaneous path, this is something that we are going to scrutinize today very thoroughly. And because there are a lot of claims from outside ISKCON, and they say that the Prabhupada give basic things and he has not given, he's only encouraged us to do Vaidhi Bhakti, but there is no external practice of Raganuga Bhakti. We cannot see that because most of the time we are only talking about preaching Krishna consciousness, spreading the message of Krishna, spreading the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu throughout the nook and corner of the universe. So for that, of course, we have to take a lot of responsibilities. And while doing that, it is almost impossible to actually practice Raganuga Bhakti separately. So how can we understand whether ISKCON is promoting Raganuga Marg or basically they are encouraging their followers to practice Raganuga Marg? So all these questions will be addressing in this class. Okay, so let me share on the screen. So first we'll start with the definition of Vaidhi Bhakti. And now this is of course a technical definition according to the scripture, according to Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Samrit Sindhu. So we'll go through the definition of Vaidhi Bhakti according to Shastra as well as according to the way Srila Prabhupada also sometimes defined in his purports. And we'll also see the definition of Raganuga Bhakti as per Shastra and as and also a general definition of Raganuga. So one thing we know, Prabhupada generally called Vaidhi and Raganuga in terms of something that we don't like to do, but we have to do. So that is called Vaidhi Bhakti, right? It's not spontaneous, it is not natural to us, but we are doing it. Just like, for example, when we went to school, so we actually did not like certain subjects, but we had to forcefully do it just to pass the exam, so that we can be promoted to higher grades, right? So similarly, in every sphere of life, we do not like certain things, but we need to do it um, as a matter of responsibility or as a matter of duty, whatever it is. So similarly, we are doing bhakti because of non-spontaneity, which is following the rules and regulations, just for the sake of following that, not spontaneously doing it. And then there is a stage which is called a spontaneous stage, which means that you do it naturally, right? So this is a general way it is defined, but we'll see both, we'll compare both things, and I will also uh, show some references where you will be able to understand in a much better way. So I will, okay, I'm sorry. I forgot to share the verse number 10:9:21. Okay. So this particular verse I have selected because Prabhupada has given a purport which is very relevant to today's discussion. So let's go ahead. So reading from 10th canto 9th chapter, verse number 21. Nayam sukhapo bhagavan dehinam gopika sutha jnaninam chatma bhutanam yatha bhakti matam iha. Synonyms: na, not, I am, this, sukha, apa, very easily obtainable, or an object of happiness, Bhagwan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Hinam, of persons in the bodily concept of life, especially the Karmis, Gopika Sutta, Krishna, the son of Mother Yashoda. Krishna, as the son of Vasudeva, is called Vasudeva, and as the son of Mother Yashoda, he is known as Krishna. Jnaninam cha, and of the Jnanis who try to be free from material contamination. Atma Bhutanam, of self-sufficient yogis. Yatha, as Bhakti Matam, of the devotees. Iha, in this world. Translation: the Supreme Personality of God Krishna, the son of Mother Yashoda, is accessible to devotees engaged in spontaneous loving service, but he is not as easily accessible to mental speculators, to those striving for self-realization by severe austerities and penances, or to those who consider the body the same as the self. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the son of Mother Yashoda, is very easily available to devotees, but not to tapasvis, yogis, jnanis, and others who have a bodily concept of life. Although they may sometimes be called Shanta Bhaktas, real bhakti begins with this Dasya Ras. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 4.11, "Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam tataiva bhujamiham mam vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvasa." As living entities surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Everyone is seeking Krishna, for he is the super soul of all individual souls. Everyone loves his body and wants to protect it because he is within the body as a soul. And everyone loves the soul because the soul is part and parcel of the super soul. Therefore, everyone is actually seeking to achieve happiness by reviving his relationship with the super soul. As the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Vedescha Sarvar Am Eva Vedya. By all the Vedas, it is I who am to be known. Therefore, the karmis, jnanis, yogis, and saintly persons are all seeking Krishna. But by following the footsteps of devotees who are in direct relationship with Krishna, especially the inhabitants of Vrindavan, one can reach the supreme position of associating with Krishna. As it is said, Vrindavanam parityaja padam ekam nagachati. Krishna does not leave Vrindavan even for a moment. The Vrindavan Vasis, Mother Yashoda, Krishna's friends, and Krishna's conjugal lovers, the younger gopis with whom he dances, have very intimate relationships with Krishna. And if one follows in the footsteps of these devotees, Krishna is available. Although the Nityasiddha expansions of Krishna always remain with Krishna, if those engage in sadhana siddhi, following in the footsteps of Krishna's Nityasiddha associates, such sadhana siddhas can also can easily attain Krishna without difficulty. But there are those who are attached to bodily concepts of life. Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, for example, have very prestigious positions, and thus they have the sense of being very exalted Ishwaras. In other words, because Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are Gunavatars and have exalted positions, they have some small sense of being like Krishna. But the pure devotees who inhabit Vrindavan do not possess any bodily conception. They are fully dedicated to the service of the Lord in sublime affection, prema. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore recommended prema pumartha mahan. The highest perfection of life is prema, pure love in relationship with Krishna. And Mother Yashoda appears to be topmost devotees who have attained this perfection. All right, so Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so here Prabhupada is actually encouraging all the devotees to follow in the footsteps of Vrindavan Rajvasis. And this is also Srila Prabhupada's mood, right from the beginning to the end of his pastimes in this uh, earthly manifestation. So we'll see that how Prabhupada is actually again and again encouraging us to follow in the footsteps of the Vrajvasis. and how Srila Prabhupada himself was the Mahabhagavat, was a resident of Vrindavan, Braj, and this is also shared by Yamuna Mataji. So we'll go through all that. So now I'll be sharing the definition of Vaidhi Bhakti. Okay, so I hope that everyone is able to see on the screen. So this is from Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1.2.293. Vaida Bhakti Adhikari tu Bhava Virbhavana Vadhi Atra Shastram Tatha Tarkam Anukulam Apekshate. Translation: those qualified for Vaidhi Bhakti are dependent on the rules of scripture and favorable use of logic until the appearance. Oh, I think I've missed the real definition of Vaidhi Bhakti. I have started with the qualification for Vaidhi Bhakti. Okay. So let me just let me share. So because it will take some time to uh, get the original words. So basically, Vaidhi is defined as that bhakti which is not spontaneous in nature, uh, which does not have rag mark, it does not have rag in that, and which is definitely dependent on the rules of scripture. Okay, so this is defined, and of course, it makes it's also part of sadhana bhakti, as Raganuga bhakti is also part of sadhana bhakti. So there are three stages of bhakti: sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prem bhakti, right? And this the section that currently we are discussing is Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti, which is part of Sadhana Bhakti. So don't confuse that with, don't think Ragmark to be as something which is connected to Bhava Bhakti, because it also comes in Sadhana, because we are still practicing. We practice the angas of Raganuga in order to attain the desired goal. Basically, that's Krishna in Vrindavan. Okay, so it's part of sadhana. Now, this is what the definition of Vaidhi Bhakti says, that so now you see this definition includes a negative connotation, which means that Vaidhi is defined that which does not have rag. Okay, so wherever there is no rag, it is called Vaidhi, which means that wherever there is no spontaneous devotion, that will be automatically be called as Vaidhi Bhakti. And what is Vaidhi Bhakti? Basically, it depends on the rules of scriptures, rules and regulations. Of course, it is with awe and reverence. So, with a lot of respect, you worship the Lord. Okay, thinking yourself as servant and him as master, or maybe in certain relationships with Krishna also, you may worship Krishna in a particular rasa, but it will be mixed with awe and reverence. So this is basically Vaidhi Bhakti. Okay. Now, what is the qualification of Vaidhi Bhakti? It is what is mentioned here, that those qualified for Vaidhi Bhakti are dependent on the rules of scripture and favorable use of logic until the appearance of Bhav Bhakti. So basically, those who are practicing Vaidhi Bhakti, they practice Vaidhi Bhakti till they reach the stage of Bhav. So basically, right from Shraddha till the stage of Asakti. Okay, so I think you are aware of the 9 stages of Bhakti, the progress by which a devotee moves ahead. All these stages. So Shraddha, Sadhu Sang, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhav, and Prem. So these are the 9 stages, which is derived from Srimad Bhagvatam by Srila Rupa Goswami. And Vaidhi Bhakti practice generally they tend to depend on the scriptures, and they do not take any chance to be independent of the scriptures till the stage of Bhav, which is on the safe side. Okay, now I think I mixed up basically certain things. Okay, so Jeev Goswami, what does he say about this particular verse? He says that because of the following, after the Ragatmikas, those practicing Raganuga Bhakti practice Bhakti with no limitations. That means that there is no specific rule concerning the time at which they will give up dependence on the rules of scripture. Is there a limit of how long those practicing Vaidhi Bhakti should depend on the rules? So this was answers. Okay, now those who practice Raganuga Bhakti, and of course will uh, cover the definition of Raganuga Bhakti in some time, and will also thoroughly understand what is actually Raganuga Bhakti. But those who are on the path of Raganuga Bhakti, or those who are spontaneous devotees, so there is no particular time when they will stop depending on the scriptures. It can happen at any point of time. But for those who are practitioners of Vaidhi Bhakti, they generally tend to depend on the scriptures to the stage of Bhav. So Bhav here means Rati, or the stage of Bhav Bhakti after Sadhana Bhakti. Okay. And there's a footnote here. At the stage of Rati, the devotee would not commit sin by his nature, and thus would not have to consider the rules of scripture. However, this Vaidhi sadhana would influence his bhav and prem, coloring it with awareness of Krishna as the Lord. So this is, I just wanted to share that this is, of course, Bhanu Maharaj's translation of Bhakti Samrit Sindhu. And so from this, we can understand that because at the stage of bhav bhakti, there is no chance of committing any sin. Devotee is generally free of any type of karma. So that's why it is the most safe stage to try to gradually become independent of the Shastra, right? But of course, because he's in Vaidhi Marg, that's why he is going to worship the Lord with awe and reverence, and he's going to attain a certain result of that. So that is going to be different than, if you remember when you had covered Madhurya Kadambini, I had shown the slides. So that time I had also shown when you read the state of Bhav. So there is Uttha Bhav and there is Uttha Prema. And Vaidhi Sadhana leads to Uttha Bhav, um, and that leads to that, of course, that is, that kind of bhav is actually inferior to the bhav that we attain through Raganuga Marg. So material piety and sin which arise from good and evil of this world, yeah, material piety and sin which arise from the good and evil of this world, rules and regulations cannot exist within my unalloyed devotees, bhav bhaktas, who, being free from material hankering, steady spiritual maintain steady spiritual consciousness in all circumstances. In such devotees have achieved me, the Supreme Lord, who am beyond anything that can be conceived by material intelligence. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:20-36, and Vishwanath Thakur's commentary. So, in performing sadhana bhakti, the Vaidhi Bhakti practitioner will depend on scriptural injunctions and favorable use of logic until the appearance of rati. After the appearance of rati, he no longer depends on these things. However, as soon as the greed manifests in him for attaining a bhav similar to that of Vrajvasi, and he develops an inclination for Rag Bhakti, the practitioner of Raganuga Bhakti does not depend any longer on scripture, rules, and logic. Thus, it is greatly superior. However, wherever that greed has appeared, it is understood that a person must have studied the scriptures in order to attain that greed. It is also necessary to study the scriptures to understand the proper sadhana for Raganuga Bhakti. Okay, so basically, what Vishwanath Thakur is saying is that unless and until you reach the stage of Bhav Bhakti, Vaidhi Bhaktas generally do not leave before that. They depend on scriptures, but the Raganuga Bhaktas, they can leave at any point of time, as well as the yeah. So there is a possibility. So initially, we may start with Vaidhi Bhakti because we are in the material world, we are conditioned, we are in Kali Yuga. So not everyone is directly at the stage of spontaneous devotion. So we may start with Vaidhi Bhakti, and then maybe as we go ahead, of course, we will have a natural desire to serve Krishna in a particular rasa, and without awe and reverence, following in the footsteps of the Vrajvasis. So that greed may come in between, and if that greed will come, then gradually we give up the worship of the law, in awe and reverence. Totally. I mean, it is quite natural, and these things will happen internally. So your emotions, your relationship with the Lord will, it will definitely, you will get that revelation as you practice bhakti, and you'll get the taste, you'll get the inclination, and you'll also know that whether you would like to worship the Lord in awe and reverence or out of spontaneity, following the footsteps of the Vrajvasis. So Srila Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbha, he also talks about two types of ruchi, which is Ajat ruchi and Jat ruchi, which means that some a devotee who is not yet reached the stage of ruchi or does not have spontaneous taste for devotional service, so they may mix the angas of Vaidhi Bhakti for the time being, and then because of course the influence of Kali is very strong in especially in Kali Yuga, and we need to have certain rules and regulations in order to come to a transcendental platform. That's why we have this first and second initiation concept, right? And we cannot get Gayatri, we cannot get Diksha mantras without the second initiation. And what does that mean? The second initiation means that qualification is required, and you need to be on a steady platform of devotion, and you have to be regulated in your devotional service. So DT worship will allow you that. It will give you that kind of, it will uplift you to come to that stage where your bhakti becomes very steady. It becomes very regulated in a timely fashion, right? So you won't take it for granted. So that kind of steadiness it will give you. And after that, you may definitely have cultivate the relationship with the Lord in a particular mood, uh, following the footsteps of the Vrajvasis. Okay, so Vaidhi Bhakti is mixed, but then it is given up at a certain point of time. Now when it is given up, of course, the safest bet is when you are at very advanced stage, which is asakti or bhav. Because at bhav stage, you realize the Lord. You can actually see the Lord, perceive the Lord, and your body becomes spiritualized. Array of Samvit and Ladini Shakti enters your heart, which is basically the Swarup Shakti of the Lord. So that's how your senses become spiritualized, and only with spiritual senses you can perceive the Lord. So you can see the Lord. So at that stage, your dependence on scriptures will totally go away. I mean, if you would like to cultivate Raganuga Marg, and that's why it is a combination of both things together. So Vaidhi and Raganuga. So there is a bhakti can be performed simultaneously also, and we'll cover that later. Okay, so this is the definition of uh, this is the okay. So this is, we have already spoken about Vaidhi Bhakti. Now let's see the definition of Raganuga Bhakti. Okay, I forgot to mention about the general definition of Vaidhi Bhakti. So what is the general definition of Vaidhi Bhakti? General definition is, as Srila Prabhupada sometimes in some places he has described. So he says that, okay, you follow the rules and regulations, and that's how you practice your bhakti, because you are we are fallen. Kalau Sudra Sambhava. Everyone is a Sudra in Kali Yuga. So Srila Prabhupada talks about that. And in order to come to a spontaneous platform, so like we know that sometimes we practice certain things very strictly, but then we develop taste for it. So from strict practices, we come to a spontaneous platform. And this is how Srila Prabhupada defines. So you do certain things very strictly, following the rules and regulations. That's Vaidhi. And then finally you come to a spontaneous stage. So now see, this is a general definition, although it is not complete, but technically, because according to Shastra, according to Rupa Goswami, the way they have defined, Vaidhi is that bhakti which includes, which does not have rag, no spontaneity, which is absolutely fine, because this is how Prabhupada also says, rules and regulations you have to follow because you don't naturally love the Lord. But then there is another element to it. The element is that of worshipping the Lord with awe and reverence. Okay, so that element, if that continues, so now even Vaidhi Bhaktas also, when they progress from the stage of Shraddha and all the way up to Asakti and Bhav, when they come to the stage of Bhav, Of course, after the stage of Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, these are all spontaneous devotion. So Vaidhi Bhaktas also, they also have spontaneous devotion. It's not that they cannot have spontaneous devotion. And this is also the way Raganuga is defined by Srila Prabhupada in some places, which says that it is spontaneous, but it is not giving the complete definition. Okay. So spontaneous devotion does not necessarily mean that you are following the footsteps of the Vrajvasis. That is the difference. And that's why Ragmar, when it is referred to as spontaneous devotion, it is incomplete. So that's why we need to understand the definition of Raganuga Bhakti also here. So let's see the definition of Raganuga Bhakti. Okay. Oops. Are you able to see on the screen?
Yes, you're able to see on the screen.
Okay. All right. So reading from 1 to 270, Bhakti Samrit Sindhu, the Eastern Wave, second chapter and verse number 270. Virajantim abhivyaktam rajvasi janadishu ragatmikam mikam anushrita yasa ragam uchyate. Translation: Raganuga Bhakti is defined as that bhakti which follows after the Ragatmika Bhakti found distinctively in the inhabitants of Raj. So this is the definition of Raganuga Bhakti, actually the technical definition of Raganuga Bhakti. So it includes, of course, spontaneous devotion is definitely there, but that is also there in Vaidhi Bhakti. But what is the difference? The difference is that you don't worship the Lord in awe and reverence, and you follow after the footsteps of the Brajvasis. Okay. Now the word Ragatmika Bhakti has been used here. So now what is Ragatmika Bhakti? Ragatmika Bhakti is the Bhakti, Rag Bhakti, which is possessed by the inhabitants, the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan, in Braj. Okay. Now I am specifically using the word Vrindavan and Braj. I am not using Goloka because Mathura and Dwarka seems to be a part of Goloka. Okay. Sometimes it is said like that. Goloka includes Mathura as well as Dwarka. So it is very specifically clearly stated by Srila Rupa Goswami that found distinctively in the inhabitants of Vraj. Vrajvasi, what is actually specifically used here to indicate that Raganuga Bhakti is only applicable for the residents of Vraj. Even for the residents of Mathura and Dwarka, this Rag Bhakti does not exist. Why? Because for the simple reason that you do not worship the Lord in spontaneous devotion, but you worship the Lord in, or you can say with sweetness, but you worship the Lord with awe and reverence. So there is some element of awe and reverence in Mathura and greater awe and reverence in Dwarka. And the further you go down, right from Dwarka, then you come down to Ayodhya, and then to come to the Vaikuntha Lokas, the Ishvara part portion keeps on increasing to a great extent, where then with Lord Vishnu, you can only have Dasya relationship. Okay. So with the Lord, with Krishna, you can have up to Madhurya Ras, but with Vishnu, you can only have Dasya Bhav. Now, uh, in Mathura and Dwarka, the Lord is of course different. That's why Prabhupada in the purport also says, Vrindavanam Parityajam Padamekam na Gacchati, right? So, the Lord does not leave one step out of Vrindavan, but we see that Krishna goes out of Vrindavan and he goes to Mathura, and then later he will shift permanently to Dwarka, right? So then who is going? Because Krishna, as our acharyas, they are saying that he does not live one step out of Vrindavan. Then who goes? I think you have heard about this, that Krishna expands himself as Vasudeva Krishna, and then he goes to Mathura and Dwarka. He resides there. Whereas our Sham Sundar Krishna, Brajendrananan Krishna, Yashodanandan Krishna, Nandana Nandana, he remains in Vraj in a aprakat form. So the concept of prakat aprakat is very important to understand, and I have elaborately described in detail this concept. I think in our Krishna understanding the tattva of Krishna's leelas, as well as I think when we had discussed about Krishna's returning to Braj, I think I have taken a session on that also. Krishna returning to Braj, and that time I have covered all these points in detail. And of course, because Krishna promises not just once, but 3 times he promises that he'll come back to Vrindavan. So he definitely will promise to the gopis when he's leaving from Vrindavan. And then he also promises Nanda Maharaj when they are in Mathura that I will come back soon. And then he promises Uddhav also, okay, that I'm going to go to Vrindavan. So, as you know from the Bhagavad Gita, that Konte Pratijanati Name Bhaktya Pranashyati, that Krishna, when he promises. So, see, the thing is that what Krishna did is he sent Balram and Uddhav in Braj to give assurance to the Vrajasis that he's going to come back. So when he conveyed his promise through the devotees, and when especially Krishna does something through the devotees, then that thing has to happen. Even Krishna may sometimes fail because of his own promise. He may give promise and he may break that promise. As you know from the example of Mahabharata, when Bhishma Pitama had attacked Krishna, and then Krishna took the wheel and then he rushed towards Bhishma to kill him. So that time Krishna broke his promise, right? Because it was his own promise. So Krishna is, he is not concerned about his own promise, whether he can keep it or not. But when he conveys the promise to his devotees, then definitely it has to happen. So our acharyas from the, so basically it's a rahasya, it's a mystery, how Krishna returns to Vrindavan and how do we understand it from the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam itself actually indicates indirectly, and of course this is actually revealed by our acharyas, that Krishna returned to Vrindavan multiple times. Okay, and that I have explained. So basically, what does it mean when Krishna is returning to Vrindavan? Krishna is already in Vrindavan. When Prabhupada is saying that, okay, Krishna does not leave this Vrindavan even one step. So, as I said, that basically Krishna becomes aprakat. Aprakat means that he disappears from material vision, which means that the Nityasiddha devotees, the eternal associates of the Lord, they can see the Lord. But the sadhakas, those who have not attained the perfection, they cannot see Krishna in their with their eyes. Whereas when Krishna is in prakat form, then those sadhakas can also see Krishna with their own eyes. Okay, so this is the difference between prakat and aprakat. So, anyways, but the point is, coming to the main point, Krishna and Vrindavan, he is totally, there is sweetness everywhere. The relationship with Krishna is identified in 5 different rasas. The Shanta ras is eliminated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because it does not involve active service. So it starts from Dasya, then it goes to Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. Now, of course, when you want to establish this kind of relationship with Krishna in Braj, then it has to be totally free from any kind of reverence, thinking that he's the master, he's the lord of the universe, or how can I worship him like this? How can I interact with the Lord like this? There needs to be some kind of reverence. So if you have that kind of feeling, then it is not possible to go to Braj. Then you will be going to somewhere else. Now, Vishwanath Thakur says that if you are specifically attracted to Radha and Krishna, the form of Radha and Krishna, but you worship Radha and Krishna with awe and reverence, then you go to a section in Goloka which is called as Golok, Aishwarya Golok. Okay, so there you can actually worship Radha and Krishna with awe and reverence. Whereas those who are in Madhurya, total Madhurya, they go to the original Vrindavan. Original in the sense that where Krishna is completely manifested in all his qualities. So that sweetness Krishna will exhibit in Vrindavan Braj, and that is sometimes called as Gokul. It is referred as Gokul by the Acharyas. Okay, so so Raganuga Bhakti, one thing we clearly understand that it is exclusively following the footsteps of the Brajvasis. No Mathura, no Dwarka, and that's why in as we'll go through one place, Vishwanath Thakur will also say that those who worship Krishna. Now, of course, if your worship is general, you are not specifically attached to Radha and Krishna. But if you want to have a relationship with Krishna with awe and reverence, then he says that these devotees will go to Dwarka. They will not go to Braj, because awe and reverence, and of course, because the concept of following the footsteps of the Brajvasis is absent in Mathura and Dwarka. Therefore, when you try to worship Krishna directly with awe and reverence, then you go to Dwarka. And then, of course, if you want to worship Lord Ram, then you worship Lord Ram with awe and reverence, you go to Ayodhya in the spiritual world. And similarly, you go to Vaikuntha if you worship Lord Narayan. Okay, so as like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that ye tamam pravadante tam sadai bhajamyam. As you surrender, I reward you accordingly. So whatever bhav you have, whatever feelings you have for the Lord, that destination you will get. Okay, so let's continue ahead. Okay, 272. इष्टे स्वारासिकी राग परमा विष्टता भवेत् तन्मय्या भवेत् भक्ति सात्र रागात्मिकोदिता. Rag is defined as spontaneous, deep thirst for the object of love. Bhakti that is impelled exclusively by such a thirst is called ragatmika bhakti. So see, generally we have got a lot of natural spontaneous attraction for the things of the material world, right? We are attached spontaneously, and that's how we are trained. And because of that, we have this spontaneous attachment for the things of the material world. And this deep attachment is actually rag. When we transfer it to the spiritual realm, then it of course becomes raga nuga bhakti. And ragat, so there is raganuga bhakti, which is basically followed, practiced by the sadhakas. That's called raganuga bhakti, and the nitya siddhas who already have that rag, they are called ragatmika bhaktas, and the bhakti that they are already exhibiting is called as ragatmika bhakti. So basically, the raganuga bhaktas, they have to follow the ragatmika bhaktas in order to attain the desired goal. Okay. काम संबंध रूपे ते प्रेम मात्र स्वरूप के नित्य सिद्धा श्रेय तया नात्र सम्यक विचारिते. So now there are two divisions of Raganuga Bhakti or Ragatmika Bhakti. One is called the Kamnuga Bhakti and another one is Sambandhanuga Bhakti. I have not shown here. It's not required at this point of time, but there are two types. So this is what the verse is talking about. So since Kam Roop and Sambandha Roop, since Kam Roop and Sambandha Roop Bhakti, which are caused by Prema alone, take shelter of the Nitya Siddhas, they have not been discussed in this section thoroughly. So see, here Rupa Goswami specifically mentions that where do you find this Ragatmika Bhakti? He says Kam Roop and Sambandha Rupa Bhakti. Now what is Kam and Sambandha Roop? So Kam Roop is basically the love of the gopis. Okay, Kam Rupa. Kam means lust, you can say like that. So who has the lust? Lust means, of course, the gopis, those who have conjugal relation with the Lord. So these are the gopis who have got lust, and their Ragatmika Bhakti is called Kam Rup Ragatmika Bhakti. Whereas Sambandha Rupa, now what is Sambandha Rupa? Sambandha Rupa means what, like whichever relation you have with the Lord, apart from Kamanuga, but you worship the Lord in that relation without reverence. So that is basically Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya. Okay, so of course Shanta also, but Shanta is not included. So that's why we have this three rasa that is representative of Sambandha Rupa Bhakti. So these are caused by Prema and take shelter of the Nitya Siddhas. So it is only found in the Nitya Siddhas. Now who are the Nitya Siddhas? Those who are in the spiritual world already. So it is not that there are currently Brajvasis who are there, and you know they are these are not the Brajvasis that are existing currently. They're talking about the eternal associates of the Lord who are in the spiritual world and who come along with the Lord when he descends to the material world. Okay, so this also you need to remember very thoroughly, that Kamanuga and Sambandhanuga, Ragatmika Bhaktis, these are basically, they take shelter of the Nitya Siddhas. And then Jiva Goswami says that the Nitya Siddhas such as Nanda are the main shelters of this type of bhakti. Okay. All right. Now, what is the qualification for Raganuga Bhakti? So we understand the qualification of Raganuga Bhakti. For Vaidhi Bhakti, we have already discussed what is the qualification. And the qualification is basically, oh, I think we have not discussed the qualification for Vaidhi Bhakti. Anyways, the qualification for Vaidhi Bhakti is basically faith, Shraddha, and of course, Shraddha in what? Faith in what? The scriptures. So because scripture is saying something, then I'm supposed to do it. That's the qualification for Vaidhi Bhakti. Whereas for Raganuga Bhakti, what is the qualification? We'll see now. Tatra Adhikari, Ragatmikaika Nishta Ye, Brajavasi Janadaya, Tesam Bhavataye Lubdo Bhaved Atradhikaravan. The qualification for Raganuga Bhakti is as follows. That person who is greedy for attaining a bhav similar to that of the inhabitants of Vraj, who are fixed solely in Ragatmika Bhakti, is qualified for Raganuga Bhakti. So what is the qualification for Raganuga Bhakti to practice Raganuga path? The qualification is simply greed. Okay, it does not talk about anything about faith in scriptures or rules and regulations. No, it only talks about greed. Now, what kind of greed for what? So greed for understanding and imbibing the mood of the Brajvasis. Okay. Like you'll feel desperate to actually follow the footsteps of the Brajvasis. You'd like to have the same sentiments as that of the Brajvasis. So now without practicing Rag, it is not possible to enter Braj. So this greed, now the question is that at what stage this greed can come to us? Okay, yeah. So this is the definition of Vidhi Bhakti. I think instead of putting it ahead, it went quite down. So, all right. So, okay, I think I missed including that particular where it says when the greed will occur. Okay, anyways, so we have known, now we know the qualification for Raganuga, which is greed, lalsa. Okay, so when the greed will arrive, so greed arrives at any particular point of time, and specifically those who have cultivated impressions in the previous life, the greed can arrive immediately also while starting bhakti. So uh, either you get, because of the impression from the past life, you may be greedy right from the beginning, or you may attain greed at a particular point of time when you start hearing about the glories of the Vrajvasis. So basically from scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, because the Srimad Bhagavatam is full of rasa, and that ras is actually directly talking about Krishna's Madhurya ras. So it is encouraging everyone to take shelter of Krishna's Madhurya ras, sweetness, and develop relationship with Krishna in one of these four rasas. So hearing about the activities of the Vrajvasis, their relation with the Lord, what they do in the pastimes of the Lord, and how they behave, how they act. So by that inspiration, then we start developing greed. So we would like to know more about them, like to follow their sentiments. We become very greedy for that. Okay, so this is actually a particular point of time. It may just occur. It's not necessarily that it has to occur at a particular point of time. It can occur at any point of time. So that needs to be understood. And now the question is that, okay, even if I am greedy, if I get the greed, maybe from the previous life, or at this point of time, I have got the greed, which meant intense desire to hear about them and to follow them. So when should we practice Raganuga Bhakti? This is the question. So for that, now what exactly we need to do in Raganuga Bhakti? So this is what I would like to share. And so this is mentioned in 294 verse. Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Krishnam smaram janam chasya prishtam nija samihitam tat tat katha rataschaso kuryad vasam vraje sada. Remembering the Vrindavan form of Krishna and his dear associates who have inclinations for service similar to one's own, absorbing oneself in hearing topics related to them, one should always live in Braj. So what we need to do for Raganuga Bhakti, remember the form of Krishna in Vrindavan, not the form in Mathura and Dwarka, and his dear associates who have inclinations for similar service to one's own. So basically, see, the first thing that is going to be revealed to you when you practice bhakti, and if you have that greed, the first thing will be revealed to you is basically the rasa. So now, how do you know what is your ras? So Srila Prabhupada in his Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, he says one very important thing. Yeah. So this is Adi Leela 4.34. In that purport, Srila Prabhupada says, devotees who are inclined to read pastimes connected to a particular rasa are in that rasa. So when you start hearing about Krishna, when you start relishing Krishna Katha, then gradually you realize that at some point of time you would like to, you naturally love to hear the pastimes of Krishna with the gopis or with Nanda Yashoda or with Sakhas or with his servants. That is like, that will become your favorite pastimes. So you'll be inclined to learn about that more and more with time. So that is the first revelation of our rasa with the Lord. Of course, it does not mean that 100% it is that, because with time it may change also. And if you commit serious aparad to a advanced devotee, then Rupa Goswami also says in Bhakti Samriddhi that even though your rasa might be madhurya or superior type of rasa, but then when you commit aparad to a Vaishnav, that rasa will actually go down to an inferior type, which basically means that from Madhurya Ras, you will actually come to the Vatsalya Ras. You will get attraction towards the Vatsalya Bhav, and your attraction for Madhurya Ras will gradually start going away. Okay, if you commit a very serious aparadh to a devotee. So that's why, unless and until we become perfect, we cannot claim 100% that this is our us, but this is a good indication that we have begun to start liking. So we will feel attached towards Srimati Radharani more and towards the gopis more, and we'll also identify. We'll feel that okay, we would like to serve Radharani, and we'll like to assist Radharani in the following the footsteps of the Manjaris or the Sakhis. And similarly, those who are in Vatsalya Bhav, they will feel more attracted towards Yashodananda, and then the other devotees who are in that ras, like that. So that is the first indication of your ras. So that ras, once you identify then that ras, then you can actually start meditating. So this is what it is mentioned here, that remembering, first of all, of course, it will be Vrindavan Krishna, and then his dear associates. So now, unless you know your ras, how can you actually meditate on someone, right? So because there are four rasas, and which devotee will start meditating unless and until you are sure that okay, this is the ras that is the to which I am most inclined, most naturally coming to me, right? So once you get that indication, it, and of course it has to be studied for a particular period of time, then you will start feeling that okay, now I would like to, I'm attracted to a particular associate of the Lord in a particular rasa. So then you will select that associate, and then you will start remembering and absorbing oneself in hearing topics related to those associates and those pastimes. And one should always live in Braj. So, of course, if one cannot live physically, then one can mentally live in Braj. So in the mind also we can actually be at Braj, because if we remember Vrindavan, the 12 forests of Vrindavan where Krishna performed pastimes, then we can also stay in Braj. Okay, so Jiva Goswami's commentary on this. Now the method of Raganuga Bhakti is described. If possible, one should live physically in the places where Krishna lived, such as Vrindavan. If one cannot do that, person should live there mentally. And Vishwanath Thakur's commentary now starts a description of method of Raganuga sadhana. One should remember the most dear form of Krishna, the son of Nanda of Kaishore age. Yeah, the age is also very important, because Rupa Goswami also says in one of the verses that the most favorable age for Vatsalya, for Vatsalya, is basically Komar age, which is 0 to 5 years of Krishna. And then Oganda is the most favorable for Sakhya Bhav. And then uh, for the gopis, it is of course the 10 to 15 years, or Nava Yovanam, which is 16 years. Krishna is eternally 16 years old. So that is actually the most favorable age to remember Krishna, the form of Krishna, uh, for the Madhurya Ras. Okay. Yeah, but in general, Kaishore is quite general and common. So all other relationships can be remembered in Kaishore age. Whereas if you remember only the Komar age, then of course there is no possibility of remembering the Madhurya Ras with the Lord in that age. So that's why Kaishore age is prescribed and it is common. Yeah, so the son of Nanda of Kaishore age and the devotees of that particular form of Krishna, who have the same types of desire for serving Krishna as oneself. Remembering such devotees, one should live in Braj. If possible, one should physically live the place. Otherwise, of course, mentally one can live. Next verse, very important verse, is also in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrahi tadbhav lipsuna karya vraj lokanu sarata. Following after the inhabitants of Braj, one should perform one's service in one should perform service in one's physical body and in one's siddha body, with a desire for a particular bhav. So what the verse is saying is that there are two bodies that a devotee has. One is the physical body with which we are practicing bhakti, and then one body which is basically spiritual body, which is basically our swarupa. Okay, so while remembering, so we are remembering the pastimes, associates of the Lord in a particular rasa, and so we also identify a particular body that we have. Now, of course, the body is not revealed to us totally, but let's, for example, if we realize that okay, we are in Madhurya Ras and we are attracted to a particular associate like Rupa Manjari, so then we will also think that okay, we are one of the gopis, we are the servants of maid servants of, or servant of Rup Manjari, and we like to hear about Rup Manjari, Anand Manjari, like the Manjaris, and cultivate similar sentiments. So basically, Siddha body is that body which is basically our Swarupa. Okay, so we may mentally conceive of something for the time being. Now there is a misunderstanding about Siddhadeya and what exactly Siddhadeya means. We'll also discuss that. Okay, but for the timing, just assume that Siddhadeya basically means a mentally conceived body with which you are remembering, because you are already attracted to a particular rasa of the Lord. Okay, so Jiva Goswami, he says Sadhaka Roop refers to the physical body, Siddha Roop refers to the body which is suitable for one's desired service, which has been developed by internal meditation. One serves with a desire for the particular bhav or rati of an associate of Krishna situated in Vraj, Tad Bhav Lipsuna. One should follow in the footsteps of dear associates of Krishna in Vraj, Loka, and others loyal to them. And then Vishwanath Thakur's commentary. One performs service with Sadhaka Roop, the present body, and with the Siddha Roop, the body which is suitable for serving Vraj Krishna in a particular type of rati or bhav one's desire, and which appears through inner contemplation with the desire for a particular rati directed to one's beloved Krishna situated in Vrindavan. One should follow after the dear associates of Krishna, such as Radha, Lalita, Vishaka, Shri Rup Manjari, and those following after them. Persons such as Sri Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis, Lokanu Sarata. Accordingly, one should perform mental service in one's Siddha Rupa, following after the examples of, okay, I think that is repeated. In one's physical body, one should perform services using one's body, following after persons such as Rupa and Sanatan Goswami situated in Braj. By the word Brajloka, one should understand persons situated in Braj, Radha, Chandravali, others. Following after them, one should perform service using one's physical body also. Some modern persons following the Saumramya Sampradaya think that since persons such as Radha did not perform services such as surrendering to Guru, following Ekadashi vows, and serving Shaligram and Tulsi, we also need not do those activities. That idea is defeated here. Srila Jiva Goswami in his commentary has explained with the word this with the words Vraj Lokas Tva Atra Krishna Preshta Janas Tad Anugatas Chata Anusarata. Vraj Loka means those dear to Krishna, like Shri Radha, and persons following after them, Shri Rupa, etc. One should follow in their footsteps. So, what this verse is saying is that, as I already explained to you, that there is the Siddha there and then there is the Sadhaka there. Sadhaka there, which is the current present body, which we serve. So now what the acharyas they are recommending is that Sadhaka there, it basically means that we follow the Sadhak group of the associates of Krishna when they appeared along with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For example, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami. So it does not say that with Sadhaka Rup we are supposed to follow Rupa Manjari, Rati Manjari, Lavang Manjari, etc. Okay. So because there are certain groups like the Sahajiyas or the Sakhi who actually dressed externally themselves as gopis, and they try to imitate the gopis in their sadhak bodies, which is totally refuted here by Srila Jeev and Vishwanath Thakur's commentary. So basically, the sadhaka body is meant for doing services which are in line with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates, because they are all sadhaka forms of the Brijvasis. Okay, so we are supposed to follow that. So, for example, Srila Prabhupada is the eternal associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we follow Srila Prabhupada. Of course, Prabhupada then follows his guru, and then ultimately Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, like that. So now Prabhupada instructed us that in this sadhaka body, what we are supposed to do. So that we are trying to do, right? That becomes our service. So with that sadhaka body, you do service, and siddhadeya, which means that with your internally mentally conceived body, you meditate or you remember on the Vrajvasis, the eternal associates of the Lord, like whichever, depending on whichever rasa you have with the Lord. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Then next verse, Shravanot Kirtana Tini Vaida Bhakti Udittani tu Yani Angani Chatani Atra Vijnayani Manisibhi. The discriminating practitioners should accept the angas which were mentioned in Vaidhi Bhakti, such as hearing and chanting as the angas of Raganuga Bhakti. So now, which angas of Bhakti should we use for practicing Raganuga? So that is basically the Shravanam Kirtanam, and of course it is followed by Smaranam, because in Raganuga Bhakti, the main prominent anga of Bhakti is Smaranam, because ultimately, even of course, Kirtan is the king of all the angas of Bhakti, but ultimately Kirtan should also make you remember the Lord and his associates and the past and of the Lord. Okay, so in that sense, Smaranam becomes the most prominent limb. Um, if Kirtan does not make you remember, then there is hardly any value to such Kirtan. So of course, Kirtan has its own potency. Kirtan is the most potent. Our acharyas, they say that Naam is the ultimate form of the Anga of Bhakti. But that Naam ultimately has to go to Rup Guna Leela. And that basically means that you will be able to remember when you chant the holy name. Okay. And surprisingly enough, in Kali Yuga, the most favorable process for remembrance, or you can say the most easiest way to remember, is not remembrance in itself, but it is remembering by the instrument of chanting, by the employing of the anga of chanting. So remembering basically does not mean that you separately meditate, try to separately meditate. Okay, of course that will come naturally. It's spontaneous ultimately. So when you are in spontaneous level, then it will come naturally when you have the greed. But when you do kirtan, then the kirtan actually will it will the most easiest way to remember the Nama Rupa Guna Lila of the Lord. Okay, all right. So Jeev Goswami's commentary. So the angas here refer to those angas of Vaidhi Bhakti which are favorable to one's particular raganuga cultivation. Srila Vishwanath Thakur, along with hearing and chanting, items such as surrendering to the lotus feet of Guru should be understood as favorable. Without those favorable items, how can one accomplish following after the eternal inhabitants of Vraj? After considering with intelligence, one should select activities conducive to one's own sentiments for Krishna and not those activities which are contrary to one's sentiments. Though prescribed in the scriptures, activities of deity worship such as worshipping Rukmini, meditation of Dwarka, the performing of mudras and nyasas, or identifying oneself with the Lord and worshipping oneself should be rejected. The scriptures also say that on the path of bhakti, there is no fault in omitting some of the procedures. Procedures such as meditation on Rukmini. Okay, I think I missed footnote number 2 and 3. So I'd like to share that also. So the footnote number 2, so Siddha Roop is given by Guru on the path of Raga Bhakti when he sees the qualification for Raganuga Bhakti and a particular inclination in a particular disciple. Theoretically, this would be a form of an associate of one of the prominent devotees in Braj with a specific ras, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsala, or Madhurya. Along with the form, specific dress and service for Krishna throughout the day would be given. However, forms of Manjaris, assistant to the Sakhis of Radha, seem to be most prominent forms given. The details are given in works like Srila Gopal Guru Goswami's, Gyanchandra Goswami, and Vishwanath Thakur's works. So basically, what it is saying is that the Siddhadeya that we are talking about is basically, I mean, of course, it does not now after Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur and Srila Prabhupada's time, this was not implemented. It was kind of rejected because what was happening is that in the name of spontaneous devotion and they were these gurus, they were actually addicted to many sinful habits. So there is no question, or the disciples, they were addicted to sinful habits. So there is no question of giving these disciples some body which is eternal or spiritual in nature. Okay, that actually is it's an offense to the process of bhakti, the path of bhakti. So that's why this Siddha concept was actually, of course, the Siddha is different, and then Ekadash Bhav, these are all different concepts, but Ekadash Bhav was actually given by, and we'll go through that. So let's not discuss now. There is the esoteric part and there is the exoteric part. So external part and the internal part, and that part will, when we go through that, I will also talk about Ekadash Bhavs and the Siddha, what is exactly meant by Siddha there, because it can be defined in different ways. So in general, Siddha there is a mentally conceived body which basically will expedite the process of Raganuga Bhakti. Okay, and it's, of course, it is not necessary to have Siddhadeha in because the Vaikuntha Vasis, they without any Siddhadeha, they anyways get a spiritual form. So in Ragmarg also, Siddhadeha is only meant to expedite the process. It is not necessary to actually mentally conceive a Siddhadeha, but it can expedite the process. So generally, it is given by a guru who actually is, of course, a guru has to be a sadguru. He has to be uh, well qualified, and he has to be at a certain stage of bhakti to be able to recognize that, you can say like asakti, at the state of asakti or bhav or prem bhakta, who can actually recognize the rasa of the disciple, and accordingly he can uh, bestow that siddha roop, or he can suggest practicing on a particular rasa with a particular body. So this is generally given by a guru. Okay, and then of course then there are the Ekadash Bhavs, the 11 uh, characteristics of a particular body of the Siddha, like the dress, the age, the complexion, and all these things, the service and all. So this will cover later on, but this is how the guru actually will indicate to the disciple. That's okay. This is, of course, the disciple has to also express some kind of inclination for the same rasa that the guru is feeling the disciple is suitable for or qualified for. So then the disciple can start practicing meditating on that Siddha. And the third footnote says the idea here is it is simultaneous in Raganuga Bhakti, not at the same instant, but during the same period. For instance, For some hours, he'll meditate, and rest of the day, he'll chant, read, and do DT services. So basically, it's a combination of multiple services that one can do, and one can also mix because as a sadhaka, we are also supposed to render some different services like DT worship, or we need to read and do some regulated services. So that can be done, and then some time can also be given directly to the meditation process, to smaranam, like that. Okay, so footnote number 4. Mudras are gestures using hands and fingers. Some are functional, indicating stages of archan. Some indicate the weapons of the Lord. Some indicate the items worshipped in worship, offered in worship. Nyas consists of touching various parts of the body with the fingers while uttering mantras. Both of these items are described in Hari Bhakti Vilas as part of Vaidhi Bhakti Archan. Nyas is also mentioned in the definition of Archan given in verse 12137. So these are basically Nyasas, Mudras, they are pertaining to Vaidhi Bhakti, and those should be rejected. Because while practicing Raganuga Marg, you cannot start meditating, all of a sudden you cannot start saying that, okay, now, oh, what about Rukmini? I'm really biased towards Brajvasis. I should show some sympathy for Rukmini and let me start meditating on Rukmini also. That's not possible. That's Rasabhas. If you want to, if you are really focused, your Sthai Bhav, the steady Ras is, if your Ras is steady, then you will exclusively be fixed on one of the Brajvasis and you will focus on their services. And whichever angas of bhakti, they will be an obstacle, which means that they will would want you to worship the Lord in awe and reverence. That obstacle should be removed. It should be rejected. It should be eliminated. So you're not supposed to do that. Otherwise, it will conflict with the rasa. It will be a rasavas. Okay. So this is what Vishwanath Thakur is saying here. And then verse number 303. Riramsam sustu kurvam yo vidhi margena sevate kevalenaiva sa tada mahistvam iyad pure. A person who serves on the part of Vaidhi Bhakti with a desire for a conjugal relationship with the Lord and a high position, but without desire for the gopis type of love, after some time becomes a queen in Dwarka. So, as I shared earlier, that someone who wants to worship Krishna with conjugal affection, but does not worship with spontaneity and worships awe and reverence, becomes a queen in Dwarka. And then, of course, Vishwanath Thakur also states that those who worship Radhesham, those who are attached to Radha and Krishna, but they worship with Vaidhi, they attain Aishwarya Golok. Right? So, this is the fundamental theoretical understanding of Raganuga Bhakti, Vaidhi Bhakti. And now we'll understand through the eyes of our ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada's teachings, how are we practicing Raganuga Bhakti in ISKCON. Okay. So, all right, I think it will take some more time, maybe half an hour or hour more. So, should we continue in the next class?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is Geeta. Thank you so much for this very, very descriptive and information, knowledge about the whole, all the bhaktis in D. It's very honestly I'm relatively new, so for me it is a lot. So I don't know about others, but I'm ready to do it next time. I don't know about others.
Yeah, I mean, if we continue, we can cover for some time, but definitely it require more time.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much for this wonderful class. Yeah, Maninder Prabhu, you want to say something?
No, I was just saying that it was good class actually. So yeah, we can continue next time also. I agree.
Yeah, if somebody has any questions, we can take that now.
Yeah, because it's 8:45 here now, so it's working days.
Yeah, okay. Let's take questions. And yeah, we can maybe, I mean, the main part of this entire, the reason we are discussing Raganuga Bhakti is to relate that with ISKCON and how we are doing it in ISKCON. That's the main part. So we can cover that next time. But yeah, so if there are any questions, let's take, or any comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Mandala Pranam to you. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. So Prabhuji, thank you so much for your discourse. Raganuga Bhakti is like what we practice, right? So our Guru Maharajas also practice Raganuga Bhakti, or they reach a point where, why this question came to my mind is because I'd heard that Srila Prabhupada, and about Srila Prabhupada that, somebody was Prabhupada was not chanting, but from his body, from his back, they heard that the chanting was going on continuously. I don't know whether it's I'm saying it rightly, but continuously you hear chanting from his back. There were some devotees who observed that. So it's like spontaneously going on. So is that true with our his disciples also? We can understand like that, or they also have to practice like us?
Well, this I think not related to the context, but one thing I can say is that Prabhupada was a Nityasiddha, and those who are Nityasiddhas who come from the spiritual world, so they, of course, they can chant constantly, and because their body is spiritual, so spiritual body can do multiple things at the same time, and it's a constant process for them. They always remember Krishna, so they're, in one sense, they are always chanting the name. So Nitya Siddha it is possible, but those who are not at the stage of Nitya Siddha, and our gurus may not be Nitya Siddhas. I mean, of course, we don't know that. If there are some of our gurus who are Nitya Siddhas, it may be possible. But if they are not, then they are also, at a particular stage of bhakti, maybe asakti, or maybe samet bhav, or prem. We don't know that. But generally, it requires at least the stage of bhav to chant the name constantly, or the body has to be spiritual. If you internally would like to chant the name constantly, then it has to be spiritual. And it has to be cannot be done in a low stage of bhakti. So I assume it can happen at the stage of bhav, at least at the stage of bhav.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And also, there is a constant fear in the mind that what if we don't finish our 16 rounds today, or when we fall sick, or something or the other. There's a fear we carry. Sometimes can't chant in the morning. Then it's a busy schedule. We have to take out time. Is there a good fear, or is it we should make sure that
Fear of what?
Fear that we will not be able to chant the rounds, or we'll miss the rounds today. We'll not be able to do our rounds complete or something like that. Always constant fear is there. Is there a good fear, or it's not a good fear to have?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, so there are two reasons why you fear. One is that because you struggle to chant the names, that's one type of fear. And other is that you are always cautious of Maya and you have that fear. So Prabhupada encouraged the second type of fear. He said that the devotee should always be cautious of Maya. In fact, Prabhupada himself actually, in his own personal example, he one time, this disciple, he told one disciple that, do you know why I cannot fall from Krishna consciousness? And the disciple asked, yeah, Prabhupada, why? And then Prabhupada said that because every day I pray to Krishna, that kindly protect me. Of course, that's his humility, and he's also teaching others that we have to, as devotees, no matter whatever stage of advancement, we should always pray for the protection of the Lord. So we should always pray that we are protected from Maya. So that fear is good. But yeah, if there is a fear that, oh, tomorrow I will not be able to chant, or or I will chant less rounds, then it means that a devotee is not steady in their bhakti, and they are fearful of that position. So So I wanted to know if devotees they have any questions related to the content that we have covered till now.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I'm sorry. My mind is a little distracted. I asked these questions. I was driving. Also had to go to the hospital, doctor visit. So, I'm driving at the same time. I just these thoughts, but a very wonderful class, Prabhuji. And please continue with the same topic next time. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mother. Yes. So, any
Hare
questions?
Krishna, Randash Prabhuji, Nanda Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for the wonderful class telling us about Raganuga, Bhakti, and Vaidhi Bhakti. In ISKCON, I know you're going to cover that soon, but we see a lot of following the rules so much, and not so much meditation about the beauty of the Lord, or just being fully engrossed on the deities. We are mostly about service. So, is that so? Which is better, Raganuga or Vaidhi?
Which is better, Raganuga or Vaidhi?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, see, this is a relative thing. Of course, when we see from a neutral point of view, Raganuga Bhakti is superior to Vaidhi Bhakti because it will give you a very intimate relationship with the Lord, and the stage of uh, the stage of love that you experience in that intimacy will be much superior. For example, Raganuga, if you practice, then it goes all the way up to Prema, Man, Sneha, Prem. After the stage of Prema, it goes to Man, then Sneha, then Pranaya, then Rag, Anurag, Bhav, Mahabhav, and then Mahabhav has got two divisions, Rudra Mahabhav, Adi Rudra Mahabhav, and then Adi Rudra Mahabhav has got two divisions, Mudanakya Mahabhav, Madanakya Mahabhav, and Mohanakya Mahabhav. So this Mahabhav is the exclusive sentiment of Srimati Radharani. Even Krishna does not have this Mahabhav. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to come, and Krishna had to take that Mahabhav from Radharani, so he could also experience the same thing. So these are all higher stages of Prema, and with Vaidhi Bhakti, you only probably reach up to Prema, the stage of Prema. Okay, and your feelings are very restricted. You only see the Lord as a master. I mean, of course, there's a conjugal relationship also in Madhurya. We don't attain that stage. Like, for example, Lakshmi Devi. So she has a conjugal ras with the Lord. But that ras is actually restricted in nature. It does not allow a lot of freedom. So the gopis can say, act, as whatever they feel, they can say to Krishna in whichever way they would like to act, they can act. And so it becomes a very, like a personal, intimate relationship, like a family member. Whereas Vaidhi is basically more towards a formal relationship with the Lord. So like someone you would meet in an office or some formal environment will not be able to do all the things that you do in the house. So that feelings are restricted. But of course, again, now it all depends on the devotee. If they would like to worship Krishna in Vaidhi, then they can attain Krishna like that. So on a absolute point of view, the Raganuga is superior, but then every devotee feels that their bhakti is the greatest. Like Hanumanji also feels that whatever service is rendering, whatever devotion he has, he is most satisfied with that. He cannot accept any other forms of bhakti or any forms of rasa. Okay, that's why you see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he tried to preach to Murari Gupta was not able to change his ras. And so there are some devotees who were not able to do that. There are some very few who actually changed, and they earlier they were attached to Ram and they were chanting the name of Ram, and then later they switched to Krishna because of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's influence. So like that.
But in ISKCON, the focus is more on the rules and following the rules. So isn't it Vaidhi Bhakti?
There is a misunderstanding. It is not. See, the intention of following. What is the intention of following the rules and regulations? That is very important. The intention is not to worship the Lord in awe and reverence. Again and again, Srila Prabhupada's purpose, if you see his teachings, Prabhupada is always trying to direct us, or is encouraging us to worship Krishna in Vrindavan. You'll see the Prabhupada purpose, nowhere he states that, okay, try to worship Krishna in awe and reverence. I don't think anywhere Prabhupada said like that. He always encouraged devotees. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's process, entire process of this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sankirtan process, the internal reason why he appeared is basically to distribute Vraj Bhav. This is what we are going to discuss now, later on. That Vraj Ras, he was actually not satisfied. Krishna was not satisfied because of Vaidhi Bhakti. He always thought that there is some lack of worship. There is, there is no intimacy in that relationship. So there is a lot of lacking in that kind of bhakti. That's why he always wanted that he wants all the jivas to cultivate Vraj Ras. And that's the reason Chaitanya Mahaprabhu especially came to give that Vraj Ras to us. Right? So the goal of now, why do we do bhakti? So, so there is a general definition. Prabhupada said that rules, follow the rules and regulations so that you come to a spontaneous platform. So this is the general definition we take. We don't take the technical definition of Vaidhi Bhakti. We don't say that we are practicing Vaidhi because we would like to worship the Lord on reverence. We are doing Vaidhi because we are contaminated state. See, unless and until we clear Anartha Nivriti, you cannot even think about Raganuga to practice Raganuga Bhakti. Of course, greed can come at any point of time. It can come right at the beginning, at the state of Shraddha, Sadhu Sang, Bhajana Kriya. But whether you can practice Raganuga Bhakti at this stage, that's where the qualification comes in. And Prabhupada says that unless and until you are free from material contamination, you cannot think about that. So we'll discuss all these things later in the next class. But just to summarize, so the goal of ISKCON, the goal to practice Vaidhi Bhakti is to come to a spontaneous level, which means get free from anarthas and come to a stage where we develop that greed to attain Radha and Krishna in Braj in a particular ras of Vrindavan. Okay, so I hope it makes sense.
Yes, Prabhuji. So, like, even when we are following the rules, we are always aspiring for that spontaneous, loving devotional
Yes.
service.
Exactly. See, this aspiration, or it's a, or you can say inner cultivation. It's a internal thing, right? So internally you may think of something, externally you may do like that. That's why we'll discuss in detail about this particular verse. Seva sadhaka rupena, siddha rupena chhatrai. That Rupa Goswami is saying that what a sadhaka is supposed to do and what he's supposed to do in his siddha body. Now, following the footsteps of Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami means Rupa Goswami did a lot of regulative activities also. He was, our acharyas also, externally they do a lot of regulative activities. I mean, taking sannyas itself is actually varnashram, part of varnashram. Why did Prabhupada take sannyas? He could have directly been a Paramahamsa, and he could have, he's transcended to the varna and ashramas. But Prabhupada taking sannyas means externally he's accepted a renounced order. So that's to, so that he's setting an example so that the followers will accept that, because we are all conditioned souls. So these things are very important because it's Kali Yuga and we are all Sudras, and we have a lot of material contaminations, we have a lot of bad habits. In order to overcome those bad habits, we are actually, the Acharyas, they have suggested a combination of Vaidhi and Raganuga. So not technically that we are doing Vaidhi, but it's just an instrument so that we come to a spontaneous level and we get rid of all the sinful habits or bad habits or contamination. That's it. So this is also the goal of ISKCON. That's what we'll see now later on.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
So,
Yeah,
Hare
so like
Krishna,
for example,
Prabhuji.
just one example I would like to give. So let's say, for example, you are worshipping the deities. Now, what are you thinking when you worship the deities? That's the discriminating point between Vaidhi and Raganuga. If you feel that, oh, my Lord, oh my God, I should worship the Lord, I should offer arti, I should offer food, everything belongs to the Lord, and I have to do it, as a matter of my respect and obligation to him. If you are thinking like that, that means you are going in the wrong direction. You are basically cultivating Vaidhi Bhakti because you are thinking Krishna to be your master. And of course, that in the beginning it is okay, but then as you advance, as you get free from material contamination, if you get attracted to the Brajvasis, then naturally your thinking process will shift. Now, what will you think? So, for example, it is mentioned in one of the Acharya's books that when Radharani gets up in the morning, when Krishna and Radharani they are in Seva Kunj and they after the Raslila pastime, they get up in the morning. Then how does Radharani do the Aarti of Krishna? So Vishwanath Thakur says that when Radharani moves her head in a circular fashion, because the teeth of Radharani are so bright and they sparkle, so the sparkling effect, the light of coming from the teeth of Radharani will fall on Krishna's face. And it seems that because of that the motion of the head of Radharani, the light moves around the head of Krishna. So Radharani, it seems that she's doing Aarti of Krishna, like that. So you see the entire cultivation, the mood, the thinking process has shifted. Now you are thinking more in terms of, okay, what does this offering of Aarti mean? So offering of Aarti can have multiple meanings. When you start thinking in the sentiments of the Vrajvasis or the Gopis or the Sakhas, then that is the right mood with which you are actually following the process. So this is called as following in the footsteps of the Vrajvasis in Siddha Deha. That means that you have identified your rasa. Okay, you are most inclined, you love this particular rasa, and then you start thinking about the associates of the Lord, and you start thinking into everything in terms of this now. So whatever external also you do, even if you are doing some Vaidhi practices, rules and regulations you follow, that also you connect to spontaneous Raganuga Marg, like that. I hope this makes a lot of sense.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I have two quick questions. One is, so Yashoda Maiya's bhav is very, very unique, right? And is that so? That's different from most of us, and very few like Putana, or I mean, even though God granted her that position. So I just wanted to tell you, Prabhuji, that yes, it's good to compartmentalize, as we are learning, but many times, like I've noticed in my case, and I'm very fresh and new in this whole thing, but if the bhav comes automatically without thinking, and it's by God's grace actually. I'm quite surprised that in my case, I don't want to say in this forum, but the bhav comes, and very surprised how that thought came in my mind, that I'm looking at the Lord in a particular way. And so I don't know, it's most also God's grace also, even if you don't make an effort, you know that's what I feel. But yeah, it's good to know all this, what you're thinking at that, because one should be aware of what one is thinking at the time of prayers to the deity, yeah, and make a conscious effort. That's important. But also God's grace it's a combination, right, Prabhuji?
Yeah, definitely. You're right in that. And so, of course, it can come naturally to us, but at least in the beginning stages, it should not be disclosed openly. And at the same time, it has to be steady over the years. So, how do you really know whether it's your mental conception or whether you are really feeling like that? Okay.
Yeah.
So, that has to be steady. It has to be constant for as you move ahead in bhakti. And of course, as I also shared earlier, that you should try to avoid committing aparadhs, okay, as much as possible, because aparadh, if it's a severe aparadh, it can actually degrade your rasa, and from higher rasa you can come to a lower rasa also. Okay, so that has to be there, and ultimately everything depends on feelings. Krishna is Bhavgrahi and Sargrahi. So he will extract the conclusion of your emotions, and uh, he will also see the intention of your emotions. And depending on that intent, the feelings, you get the desired result also, or the goal. So if you practice it, it's a simple thing. Whatever you practice in sadhaka body, you attain that in the spiritual world also. The same thing. whatever you remember the time of that, you attain the same thing. Okay. So if your feelings are going towards Brajvasis, their sentiments, then it indicates, yeah, okay, so you will basically go to Braj. But if your feelings are naturally getting attracted to Vishnu or Krishna in Dwarka, Mathura, then those kind of that awe and reverence will also be there in your worship. Okay.
So
So we have to be
Vrijvasis,
careful.
so
We
Prabhuji,
should just
Vrijvasis means
yeah,
Vrindavan, right? People living in Vrindavan. Thank
yeah.
you, Prabhuji.
Brajvasi means excluding Mathura and Dwarka. So those who are in Braj. Okay. So one thing we just have to be cautious that while practicing bhakti externally regulative form, we should not, as Srila Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Thakur says, that we should reject whenever the thought of awe and reverence will come for the Lord. Of course, this will happen at the advanced stage. As I said, that when to start practicing Raganuga Bhakti, that is, of course, it requires permission from the Guru also. You need to share your thoughts with the Guru. And the Guru should also have, he must have the confidence in you that, okay, now you are ready for this. So after that stage only, you can start specifically meditating on a particular, format. So, I mean, of course, there are levels of different types of meditation, different types of remembrances, different stages of remembrance. Prabhupada writes in letter of instruction also that there is the Shravana Dasha, then that it comes Varana Dasha, then Smarana Dasha comes. And after that Smarana Dasha, there are the 4 stages of remembrance leading up to Samadhi, Samadhi being the highest. So, there's a lot of difference in all these different stages. Okay. And as you progress, so like for example, let's say you start meditating generally, and then you start meditating on a specific thing. Like for example, Srila Rupa Goswami is saying that Rag Bhakti is basically when you start remembering Krishna in his Vrindavan form. So that becomes specific. Then, okay, Krishna in Vrindavan. And one thing you must have noticed that everywhere Srila Prabhupada established the worship of Radha and Krishna. Although he did say that our worship has to be like Lakshmi Narayan, they should be in Radha Krishna should be worshipped like Lakshmi Narayan, the temple. But that is just to make us cautious in our worship, because in the name of spontaneous greed, we may take it for granted. We may take things very cheaply, and we may not be qualified, but we start imitating certain things. So that will be the cause of our fall down, and we can become sahajiya also. In order to avoid all these things, Prabhupada said that, okay, let's worship Radha Krishna in the temples, as because temple worship is meant for everyone. It is not for you only, right? Your home deity worship, it may be a bit different, but in the temple you worship, I mean, the Shringar and everything is kind of very opulent, right? So that way Prabhupada suggested, but of course Prabhupada ultimately wanted that we come to the spontaneous platform. Yeah, so we have to be cautious at the right time, and of course we need to know when we need to start meditating. So there are different stages of meditation. We get specific, and then the more the meditation becomes intense, then we spend more time on meditation. Remembrance comes naturally for a longer duration of time. You will be able to remember, and then you will remember a specific form of the Lord with a specific pastime, with specific rasa. So these are all the developments of that stages. Okay, and finally you reach the state of samadhi, where you attain the state of bhav or prem, like that.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Do we have a list of the aparadhs?
List of what?
Aparadh. Any, so that we know what.
10 offenses to the holy name. You can Google it and you'll get. I mean, this is something devotees recite every day in the morning after Mangala Aarti.
Okay.
In most of the temples, 10 offenses to the holy name from the Padma Purana.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you
Of
very
course,
much, Prabhuji.
main aparadh that you need to remember is offense to the devotees, and of course, offense to Guru is worst. Offense to Guru, offense to devotees, and to think that Krishna is equal to Shiva or Brahma. Of course, that I think everyone in ISKCON is convinced that Krishna is supreme. So that offense is not that much. But then, of course, we have other offenses like maintaining material attachments to the holy name, committing sinful activities on the strength of the holy name, like that. So these are all severe offenses. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that if you are inattentive while chanting the holy names, that is the root cause of all the offenses.
Oh, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, thank you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that this topic is it is Gaudiya Vaishnava topic. It is not somebody else's property. It is our property. So we need to know about these things. And he also says that generally devotees who are practicing for 10, 15 years, at least for 15 years, they need to know about these things thoroughly. So yeah, I mean, I assume that our devotees also in the group, they are practicing for a good amount of time. And that's why I chose this topic. I think most of the devotees are initiated also. So it's very important to know these concepts.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for this nectar class. And this topic is very interesting and bringing up about for the who are practicing from since 15 years, and most of them are initiated devotees. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
All right. So any devotees, they have any question? Any other devotees, comments or questions?
Yes. Think nobody has any question or comment. We can end up the
Okay.
call here.
So yeah, next class is going to be very important because we'll see actually practically how we implement that in ISKCON. Okay, so please try to be present on that day.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. So it will be a part of 2, right?
Yeah.
Raganuga Bhakti. Yes. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Let's pay obeisance to all the Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpatarusha kripa sindhu vacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Anant koti Vaishnav ki jai.
Jai,
Namaste Thakur ki jai.
jai,
Ki jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagvatam ki jai.
jai,
Premrasa Prabhu ki jai.
jai.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.